From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We are joined, as always, with our super producer, Alexis, codename Doc Holliday Jackson. Most importantly, you are here, and that makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. It's the top of the week, which means it is time for more strange news. We're doing our own SFX right now. And This adventure is going to take us to space. It's going to take us to Salt Lake City, and it's going to take us quite possibly to your face in a very serious, literal way.
That sounds like a threat, man.
It is, but it's not a threat we're making.
Fair.
Yes, and in the end, it won't be as dire as it sounds.
Most few things are, very few things.
Is that a Linkin Park reference, Matt?
Sure.
Okay, cool. R.I.P. Chester Bennington.
And write in and let us know your favorite Linkin Park reference. That's 1-833-STDWYTK, or you can email us directly, conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com. There's one person, of course, we'd love to hear from in particular today. That will be our pal from Guadalcanal Diary, Murray Attaway, who wrote into us. Can we say that?
I guess so, yeah.
I thought he would like a shout out.
I hope he's listening to this episode.
Well, Murray, we'd rather hear from you than from Jeff Bezos. But Jeff, if you're listening and you'd like to write to us before you go on your trip, we'd love to hear from you too, man.
I have become so numb from all the listener mail from Jeff Bezos.
Is that a Linkin Park reference?
And so, Jeff, as you may know, in addition to probably being a huge Linkin Park fan, is planning to take his own rocket ship to space. We'll get into the details in a moment, but just for the headline here, this may not sound like strange news at first, right? Everybody's heard of Jeff Bezos. Everybody has heard of Amazon, and most people have heard that post-divorce, he is planning to ride his own rocket ship technically into space. Not to the moon, but just enough out of the atmosphere to be considered space. You may have also heard that once this news broke, a change.org petition hit the internet. And I am looking at it now. As of now, 260 people have signed a petition that is pushing to not allow Jeff to return to Earth once he makes it to space. You guys have heard about this, right?
I have. It's kind of one of those jokey, symbolic petitions, though, right? I mean, it's not like it's a change.org petition. I don't see this going anywhere, but it's a nice little middle finger to Jeff. Lets him know that, most people don't care for him.
Yeah, this is the thing. So this happened during previous presidential administrations, perhaps most notably during the Barack Obama administration. There was this statement from the White House that said, hey, make these petitions, participate in be a good citizen and participate in matters that concern you. And if a petition hits above a certain threshold of signatures, then the White House will address. They didn't say they would definitely do whatever people wanted them to do, but they said they would address whatever the petition was about. And that backfired beautifully because, as another president would say, they misunderestimated the internet and the way that the collective consciousness of an online community works. What I mean is that a bunch of people signed a petition for the U.S. to build a Death Star. And then somewhere in the Oval Office, somebody went, okay, all right, we got to walk this back. So yeah, these change.org petitions, they run the gamut from serious to satirical. Right now, no fooling, it is safe to say that this is probably a satirical petition. First things first, let's talk a little bit about Jeff's trip to space. We call him Jeff here on Stuff They Don't Want You to Know. His trip to space, it's not like landing on the moon, which is a much more complicated and much more expensive endeavor. Instead, he is taking an 11-minute flight, that's the total runtime, to the edge of space in something called New Shepard. He's going to be riding with his brother and one unnamed auction winner who paid $28 million for the third seat. They'll be.
I'm sorry. That wasn't a misspeak. That was the actual amount that person paid.
Yes. $28 million, 11 minutes.
You can get a ticket to space for cheaper than that, though, right? Like, is this just for the privilege of riding with Bezos?
It's mainly the auction aspect of it, I think.
I see.
Because people, the price probably escalated as people were, I think you're right. I think part of it is the cachet of riding with the world's richest man. In case you're curious, there is going to be a little bit of math in this section that does work out to a little more than 2.5 million per minute. If you're just like, if you're thinking what you would do with $28 million, that's 11 minutes.
I'm just imagining the largest shredder in the world and then someone just funneling the money into the shredder as the rocket is reaching space.
Super Shredder from TMNT 2, Secret of the Ooze?
Yes, just like that.
Okay. I have a question. Isn't there a little bit of controversy where like Bezos isn't even going to proper space? Like he's just going into like low Earth orbit or something like that. Like it's sort of like a bit of a, kind of like, okay, come on, guy. This isn't really what you're saying it is.
Yeah, it's called the Kármán line, Karman. And the Kármán line is it's an imaginary, not a physical boundary that's about 62 miles or 100 kilometers above Earth's surface. When they get to that line, the rocket booster they're on is going to separate from their little dome-shaped capsule, and then that's going to float around for a little bit, re-enter the atmosphere, and then, poof, parachutes, it'll float back down to Earth. And Bezos said, this is a big deal to him. It's an adventure. He wants to go on this flight because it's, quote, a thing I wanted to do all my life. For the record, Jeff, I fully agree. Space is cool. Getting up there is amazing. Staying up there, I would argue, is even more impressive. So we're not talking about that news itself. We just need to set the stage here. The question is, when I read this, I can't be the only person who was thinking, well, okay, hypothetically, could he stay in space if he wanted to? And it turns out there is a way to answer this question. And first, of course, obviously, again, we have to emphasize that Petition is satirical. I don't think anybody is really expecting this guy to stay in space. But if he did, how would this work? I was thinking about this, and the best place to live for a long period of time in space, in a place that's still like Earth orbit, would be, of course, to go to the one main space station the species has, which is the ISS. And you guys know about the ISS, right? It's the dream destination.
And I saw a graph. I think it was being memed or whatever. People kind of poking fun of how Jeff isn't really, truly going into proper space, but it's not. It is space, but like the ISS is not that far off from where he's heading, right?
The ISS it's much further away from the Kármán line. It's about 254 miles away from the surface of the planet. And so I was thinking, okay, Jeff can't live with his two roommates in this capsule forever. It's not designed to support somebody for that amount of time, right? For an indefinite amount of time. It's an 11-minute ride. But what if he bought the ISS? The thing is, he's one of the few people who can.
Yeah.
The ISS cost $150 billion USD. His net worth right now is $200.5 billion. So he'd still have $80.5 billion to play with. Not too bad if he buys it outright. But wait, it cost NASA $3 to $4 billion a year to operate ISS. So if we if we do the math, he can live up there. And this, if it's 4 billion, not 3 billion, he can live up there for 20 years.
Wow.
It's sort of like the hidden costs of buying a Bugatti or something like that, or like a McLaren. Like the ticket price is like, $200,000 or whatever, but it costs literally thousands of dollars a year just to maintain it, to do the proper approved, maintenance for those types of vehicles.
Exactly. And it's the maintenance that gets you. It's also not just the maintenance on the hardware, or should I say spaceware. It's also the maintenance on the human wear, because one of the reasons that astronauts have not spent more time in space is it's not just the tremendous, preposterous cost. It's also the exposure to space radiation, the long-term effects of living in an environment that humans were not evolved to live within. We talked about this a little bit in the past, but Jeff would also, he would have an increased risk of cancer, heart disease, cataracts. There were some experiments with sex in space by a couple space agencies. Well, by some astronauts acting on their own accord. Okay, so NASA didn't officially know, but sex in space is complicated because of your circulation. It's not a ton of fun. You need equipment, Velcro, straps, and stuff. So his romantic...
you need that for his regular. I mean,
that sounds like a lot of fun. Just putting
equipment,
that out there.
straps, and stuff. I love it. Wasn't Missionary the most popular position because it was just logistically speaking, because it gave you purchase more so than say other ones that maybe are not appropriate for a family show?
I think it's because astronauts were kind of vanilla.
Also
honestly,
true.
But they probably walked through a couple different case tests, because that is how science works. So Jeff's love life would take a hit. He would have increased health risk. His bone density would suffer. And that means that eventually it would be physically very difficult for him to return to Earth. Therefore, as we're doing this thought experiment, all you would need to do is convince him to stay up there in space, 250 plus miles from the surface of the Earth, longer than anyone else. And his body would ultimately make it impossible for him to safely return. For the record, the longest time spent in space is 437 days. That is a record that goes to Valery Polyakov. He spent that time continuously in space. So just the whole time he's in space, it's not counting flying back down, flying back up.
If I could make a way too late in the game joke, it's definitely clear that Bezos would need the whole ISS to himself, because he'd suck all the air out of the place. No, there'd be none left for anyone else.
Guys,
okay, he probably would need a support staff, unless he's going to learn a ton of stuff about maintaining a space station. But, I imagine there's one other intervening variable, which is that he could pour his tremendous fortune into researching ways to improve the station, which might change things. But with that in mind, because I didn't really see anybody doing the math there. With that in mind, I have to ask you all: would you, if you could, would you stay in space for 20 years?
No. Nope.
No.
Nope. But if I were a billionaire, I would convince a lot of people who weren't billionaires that they need to go to Mars, because it's really important to be on Mars or in space. And I would recommission the Mir space station. Mm-hmm. And I would build 7 more of them. Mm-hmm. And I would say, hey, you guys really got to get up there. It's great. And we need your help. And humanity needs you, because Earth is dying. So get out of here and go save us. And then I would drink a Mai Tai.
I was also thinking of a conversation with Langston, Langston Kerman, exactly, about that. And that was
fully convinced.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what we have to watch out for? I don't think I said this in our conversation on air, but what you have to watch out for, folks, when it comes to space travel, is when going to Mars becomes a punishment for something, right? When the UK was shipping people off to Australia. If Mars ever becomes a punishment, then watch out, right? It won't matter then whether or not you are a billionaire, whether or not you are Jeff Bezos. I'm with you guys. I agree. I don't think at this point it's a good idea for a human being to spend that much time in space unless you're planning on a one-way trip. And if that's what you're planning, go further, go full Voyager. You know what I mean? See things no one else has seen. Otherwise, it'd just be a really weird flex. You're not even at the moon. You're just kind of outside the window of humanity.
Didn't China just launched
Yes.
a space station, Tiangong? I don't know how to say it correctly, but they very recently, I think within a month or two, previously to this episode, they sent up, I know they just sent up crew for the space station.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. And that's actually, its orbit is between 210, 280 miles. But I'm thinking, if you're a shrewd businessman like Jeff Bezos, go for the gently used version, because it's also the one that's been proven to be sustainable, right?
Got it.
So we'll pause for a second for a word from our sponsor. We'll return with more strange news. Before we go, let us know what you think the future of space travel is, or what you think it should be. Satirical as well as serious answers, please, whatever the spirit moves you to do. As that creepy guy in Poltergeist says, all are welcome.
All right, and we're back. And I hope, just as planned, you heard a Maybelline commercial just before this segment.
Maybe I was born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline. That one?
Or
maybe it's cancer.
Well, maybe. Let's begin here with a CNN article from almost exactly 1 week ago. Makeup may contain potentially toxic chemicals called PFAS or PFAS, study finds. Okay, yeah, what is that? Toxic? I don't like that. Toxic chemicals in my makeup? I don't like the sound of that. Well, you shouldn't like the sound of that. It's not good. There has been a lot of reporting on this since this initial article, at least that I saw in CNN Health. And you may have read some, you may have seen some on your phone. I just want to break this down a little bit, because we have discussed these chemicals before many times in many different scenarios, and this is just the latest one. So this won't be too long, I promise. I'm not going to put you all through, oh man, there's more dangerous chemicals in my body now. This.
That should be a segment. Is that the name of the segment? Oh man, there's more dangerous chemicals in my body now.
Yeah, that's really
sound effects. Woo!
But this is important, Matt. This is important stuff, and people need to know.
It is. So there is a new study. You can find it right now if you wish. You can look up fluorinated compounds in North American cosmetics. It is available online. I think actually the entire paper is online, or at least much of it is. You can search for that and find it. And that is an unlikely scenario. Usually, if you are looking for a study like this, you have to pay for an article or something.
Real quick, there is one workaround, and it's very important that people know this. So I've been thinking about this. We need to do an episode on the grift of academic publications. In the meantime, while we're researching that, and there very much is a conspiracy and a grift, let me give you a little life pro tip here. All you need is the name of the author, the name of the scholar who created that. They will typically, if they're alive, they will have some sort of email or contact. And if you contact them directly and you ask them yourself for the paper and just say, I want to read it because I'm interested, or I want to read it because I'm doing research for something, then 9 times out of 10, they will happily send you a copy. So you can get around the system that way if you wish. But you're right, Matt. A lot of those papers are, and some of them are even taxpayer funded, and you're not allowed to read them without paying a fine or a fee.
That is excellent advice, Ben. It's true. I am interested in your thoughts on the grift aspect of it, because I imagine, I wonder who's getting that money. But it's sort of like newspaper sites where if you go into private browsing mode, you don't have to pay, which you think they would have found a way around by now.
Yeah, that's right. And Ben, I love that your workaround will be highly effective until a lot of us start doing it. And then all of these researchers are just getting emails. Hey, Ben told me I can just email you.
Oh, yeah. Tell them, and if they have a problem with it, please send them to our complaint department, which is Jonathan Strickland. His email is available.
Yes.
I wonder if anyone's ever written to him. Anyway, yes, you're right. Sorry, not to derail us.
Jonathan says he receives very little from the complaint department.
Oh, well, I guess that means we're doing well. No complaints. Yeah. Usually our complaints end up as iTunes reviews, though, but that's its own thing.
That's right. So let's jump into this study. It examined 231 cosmetic products that are sold either in Canada or in the United States or both. And here's the big takeaway. 52% of those products that they tested contained some amount of these PFAS. I'm going to call them that because that's what a ton of the news outlets are calling this. But PFAS, it stands for something. It's pre or polyfluoroalkyl substances. Okay, we've talked about this before. These are carbon or fluorine-based chemicals. They're man-made. They're highly resistant to breaking down in any way. So heat doesn't really break them down. If you apply oils to them or water to them, these compounds just kind of stick around. That's why they call them forever chemicals. The thing you should know is that they're super useful in all kinds of applications for products across the human spectrum, and they have been in use for a long time, and they continue to be used for a ton of applications right now. I'm just trying to remember, guys. I know we talked about them with regards to Teflon and non-stick surface applications. We talked about them in firefighting foam and I believe pesticides, but I wasn't sure. I know there's other big things that these things are in. Paints, waterproof fabrics, which is a weird one I never thought about, and fast food packaging. I had no idea that the special part of your fast food packaging that prevents the oils and other things from getting, attached, or the cheese from attaching, or whatever it is.
Pizza boxes. Yep.
Yeah. It's actually these things.
Oh,
it's just coating them. And yeah, you're probably ingesting it every time you get takeout. Is
it the same kind of stuff that makes things like moisture repellent when you see like the water droplets kind of bead up? Like I believe 3M makes a chemical like that you can spray on things that'll cause them to be like literally cause moisture to not soak in, but like turn into a bead and just roll right off.
Often water resistance is one of the big selling factors for these chemicals, which brings us to cosmetics. Why would it be in cosmetics? Well, one of the problems with lots of different kinds of makeup, and before you think, oh, Matt, what do you know about makeup? Well,
Matt, what are you? Hey!
I was in theater.
What
I was in
this guy?
Theater. Okay, I used to do all my own makeup. Okay, I know the bases. I know all the things. I know how to apply.
Can you contour?
Oh, I can contour, baby. I can do it all.
Can you do a smoky eye? And are you or are you not married to a woman?
I am married to an incredible artist when it comes to makeup. Yes. So I know more about it than you may think. But the point of this is to say one of the primary issues with makeup is that's not a primary issue. It's one of the big, I don't know what you would call annoyances with makeup is the need to constantly touch up or reapply or like just keep putting stuff on your face to make sure it looks the way you wanted it to when you got up and you did your makeup in the morning. Well, companies responded and they said, well, we'll make products for you that are going to stay exactly where they are. If you sweat, it's not going to be a problem. If you get some water on your face, if you're washing your hands or something, whatever is occurring, it's not going to come off. It's going to look good. Well, the way they fixed it, the way they got to that point was by adding these chemicals. And, that's not to say every makeup company is doing this. That's not to say that every brand has these things in them.
Sure.
But it's a trend. It's a big trend. And there's some screwy stuff going on in here because a lot of these companies aren't adding these things, these chemicals into their ingredients lists. So, right?
Yep.
So let's talk about what this study found. We said 52% of the products that were tested of those 231 products had these PFAS in them. Let's look at the actual percentages. 36% of the concealers they tested had these things. 40% of face products, general face products like brush, powders, bronzers, highlighters, primer, all that kind of stuff. 47% of mascaras. That was the one that I thought would have the most, to be honest, you guys.
Right, because it's supposed to have stain power, right? You want waterproof mascara.
Yeah, well, the old joke is that, like, somebody crying and their mascara running, for example. This theoretically prevents that. Same with the, like, kissable lipstick, right? That doesn't come off or smear when you give somebody a smooch.
That's the next one. 55% of lip products, lipsticks, glosses, shadows, liners, all that kind of stuff. Even lip balm had this stuff in them.
Why lip balm?
Well, there's another thing that, at least according to the National Law Review, one of the other big things, and from the study, one of the other big things that these substances can do, these chemicals, is give you that glossy kind of wet look. And that is very popular right now. Like the shiny, glossy, wet look. These things can help out with that too. And that is very common with lipsticks and lip products. And for my money, that's the most dangerous product in here because it's on your lips, which are already, you absorb more things through your lips than you would on any other part of your skin or your eyes in this area. But if it's on your lips, you are for sure licking your lips at some point, getting a little bit of that substance directly into your body by ingesting it. And if they've got forever chemicals, every time you do that, getting a tiny dose.
Not to mention passing it on to a partner or a child, potentially, like with, kisses on the cheek or the lips.
As a fellow theater person, I'm still actually in a sketch comedy group. I'm wondering if, the troubling thing about this is that it doesn't seem to matter what kind of price point you're buying at, right? Even if you're getting the discount Halloween dollar store makeup, or if you're going to Sephora, that's the one. It'll still contain, wait for it, because I know how to pronounce this, polytetrafluoroethylene.
Yes. Yeah.
You nailed
100%. All the polyfluoroalkyls are in there. Again, it doesn't matter. You're right. The price point doesn't matter if it's MAC, if it's Neutrogena, whatever. You're getting it. Maybe. Because, and I haven't even finished the list yet, but the reason why we don't know right now is because this study does not name specific brands.
Right.
At least it does not say whether specific brands have these substances in them. It's almost like it is really an initial study in a lot of ways to identify if it was a problem. Now, from this point forward, there's going to be a lot more testing of a lot more products to see which ones exactly have it in them. And as we're going to talk about in a moment here, there's going to be legislation, hopefully moving forward, that in the United States, at least, is going to ban these substances in these chemicals in these products. We'll see, right? Let me just finish this out really quickly. 62% of all liquid lipsticks that were tested had these chemicals, and 63% of all foundation. Foundation is one of those things that many, 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 many people use, even if you don't wear a lot of makeup. And knowing that 63% of it had these PFAS in it is just really troubling. Really, really troubling. All right, I'm going to move on here. Here's the last thing. 88% of the products they tested did not disclose on their labels that the products contained any type of these chemicals. So that you're talking about of all the products that had the chemicals, 88% of them didn't say a word about it.
And they're required to, by the way, regardless of the new legislation that's under discussion. They were already required to disclose this, and they just didn't.
Yeah. This is a real problem. Thankfully, there is legislation that has already been put forward, as we said. You can look at the best place I found this was in a friggin' press release from Susan Collins' website. She's a senator from Maine, but it has a lot of information about the new bill that was put forward. You can go to her website. It is collins.senate.gov. and you can find the actual bill if you want to. There are other places you can find it too. That's just an easy, free way to find it. There's no paywalls or anything. It's very, very simple. I'm going to read some of it. You ready? Or
Yes.
actually, do you guys have it up? Does somebody else want to read it? I've been talking a lot.
Yes, let's do an official voice. A bill to ban the use of intentionally added perfluoroalkyl or polyfluoroalkyl substances in cosmetics. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled. Section 1, short title.
This act may be cited as the No PFAS in Cosmetics Act. Section 2, ban on perfluoroalkyl or polyfluoroalkyl substances.
Take it home, Matt. Take us
Here it
home.
goes. Okay. Here it goes. Directed rulemaking. It's all caps right there.
Ooh, this guy's pissed.
Not later than 270 days after the date of enactment of this act, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, referred to in this section as the Secretary, shall issue a proposed rule to ban the use of intentionally added perfluoroalkyl or polyfluoroalkyl substances in cosmetics. Not later than 90 days after issuing the proposed rule, the Secretary shall finalize such rule.
And then we've got some fine print here. B, definition. In this section, the term perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substance means a perfluoroalkyl or polyfluoroalkyl substance that is man-made and has at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom.
Got it.
Wow.
That's the whole thing.
That's the whole thing. It's tiny. It's just like, hey, they read this news. They saw the study and they're like, you know what? Let's put this in. Here it goes. None of these. Okay. And you get 270 days and then, and then an extra 90 days. Cool. So something will happen sometime if it gets passed.
Mm-hmm.
It is so weird the way lawmaking like this functions, right? I mean, it's good that there's a long time for research to happen, for discussions to occur, but at the same time, it feels like if it's an imminent threat, we're screwed.
Yeah, well, did not think I would find myself in this position today, but in defense, I can't believe I'm saying this, in defense of this kind of government legislation, the way the system works, they can't really just turn off the switch. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're crooked. It just means that they're dealing with these supply chains of a vast magnitude. And actually, there are a lot of people who would argue, various stakeholders would say that's not enough time. As a matter of fact, certain lobbyists will say like, hey, we need, 10, 15 years.
I completely agree. And I totally see that stance, and I agree with you. It's just unfortunate, I guess, when something really does pose a threat. There's no way to turn on a dime.
My question though is the brevity of this bill proposal indicative of like them not taking it that seriously?
Oh, no, quite the opposite.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, because I'm just so I guess that's okay. I see what you're saying, because I'm just so used to seeing such convoluted, writing and legalese, and this just seems very straightforward and to the point. But I guess that's maybe you answered my question, and I totally see what you're saying. That it does make sense because it's very clear. It spells out in very understandable terms what the thing is. It defines it in pretty hard to dance around kind of terms. Like it tells you exactly what we're talking about. It means a perfluoroalkyl or polyfluoroalkyl substance that is man-made and has at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom. And Matt, based on your research, that's a good definition, right?
Yeah, man. If it's fully fluorinated, you're in trouble. Yeah, but yes, it is. It checks out. And I want to run really quickly through just reiterating the threat that these things pose to us as humans, as carbon-based organic material that are organized in a really cool way, but these things are dangerous to us. So we talked about it before. These things are not naturally occurring. These chemicals, they take a long time to break down. They've been shown to cause a bunch of terrible stuff to occur in any human and animal that they get into, especially when you ingest them. Things like infertility can be caused, learning issues, cancers mainly, but infertility and cancer are two major things here, right? Especially for the human race. They have a tendency to remain in humans and animals while they wreak havoc on the systems, and we've been putting them in all this stuff for a long time. According to the Centers for Disease Control's Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, these things have the potential to affect growth, learning, and behavior in infants and older children. They can lower a woman's chance of ever getting pregnant and, again, increase cancer rates. So these chemicals are really bad. We don't want more of them in us or applied to our faces. So what can you do? Knowing that a lot of makeups have these things in them, are you going to wait that 300 and something days to have any kind of action via law? Or maybe you can take some action on your own. You can go to the Environmental Working Group, or EWG. They're a consumer organization that maintains this database on all kinds of different personal care products. I don't know much about the organization beyond what it states on their website, but it's at least a good place to start to inform yourself about any given product, because it's probably not going to be on the label, right? Do check out the labels, though, on any makeup products you use, just to see if there's anything there. Maybe the company does list it, but if they don't list it, look for things like water resistant. That's a good keyword. You want to stay away from those, or long lasting. Pretty much consider those suspects and don't use them until you know that they don't have them in there. But the one huge takeaway for today is you can rest easy about your makeup, because no matter what's in it and how much of it you're putting onto your face, you're already getting a pretty much lethal dose of these things, at least an eventually lethal dose of these things through all the other uses that they've had historically through pesticides and the Teflon that was, on the pans that you ate eggs off of when you were a kid. So you'll be all right with the makeup. We've all got cancer anyway. Wow.
There it is. There it is. That's the kind of sunshine. That's the kind of sunshine you've come to expect from us, fellow conspiracy realists. Well, it's an ugly truth, but I think most folks, most of our fellow listeners are tuning in because we believe that an ugly truth is more important than a pretty lie.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a good makeup joke here. We'll fix it in post.
It makes every moment that much more important and special, right? Knowing that there are terrible things going on and there's not much we can do to stop it and even protect ourselves. Yikes. Okay, I don't want to get even scarier here. I didn't mean to do that. I don't mean to be such a downer. It's just these PFAS are a thing that very well, and I'm going to just say it here, very well may lead to a sharp decline in humanity's numbers and ability to continue as the force that we are. I really think so. I think there's the environmental issues, like more and more we're finding these things in the environment.
Right.
And it may not just be humanity that gets taken out through these things. It may be a lot of ecosystems and biospheres. Sure.
Yeah. Amphibians are on the front line.
Absolutely. And it's the kind of thing that we learned from the way things like microplastics proliferate. And, it's like they have a base level of research that goes into it to make it acceptable to put it out as a product. But we don't have the ability to test the long-term effects on the environment or the long-term effects on human health. They can maybe model it, I guess, but, we for good reason, don't do human experimentation. But it is kind of a roll of the dice a lot of the times with these technologies and these things that we don't even have the context to fully test properly, right? Long term.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's not a long-term test that's been conducted with these specific constraints that we would need. I would also say, more importantly, to build on your point, Matt, there is an aggregate effect. The real danger to humanity is not the danger to humanity and organisms in general is not the existence of PFAs or the existence of, some sketchy stuff in your sunscreen, or even just the existence of microplastics. These team up. They're like for any Marvel Comics folks, they're a league of evil mutants, but they're a league of evil chemicals. And when they snowball together, when they have this cumulative effect, yes, we don't have the long-term studies we need for a lot of these things as individual cases. And we have nothing like a long-term study of what happens when all of this stuff converges. And that, I imagine, is a danger that future historians are going to think about pretty often.
Yep. So enjoy this commercial for a product that does not contain PFAS.
It is just a commercial for PFAs.
Okay, and we're back with one more strange news, piece of strange news, article, episode. I don't know what I'm doing today. Guys, I had a red-eye flight in this morning, and I haven't done that ever in my life. And the plane landed at 5:30 a.m. Atlanta time. And then I came straight home and slept till about noon. I think I'm sort of normalized, like I'm on East Coast brain now, but I'm sorry if I seem like I'm in a fugue state or something. But I wasn't so foggy that I wasn't able to come up with a fun, strange news story. And this is one that I heard about on a YouTube channel that I love called Internet Today. And they dug up this story, and it didn't seem like it made a whole lot of headlines. It's a little bit niche. It's sort of it's basically a story involving the most extreme possible version of lying on your resume. By the
way, Noel, we're just glad you're here. But continue.
Thank you. I mean, that's not enough for me just to be here, guys. I have to bring my A game, and I think today I may be on my B+ game. But have either of you ever embellished on a resume? You don't have to say. I think we all have to some degree or another, whether it's just emphasizing a skill or perhaps shortening a gap in employment. But wondering what y'all's experience has been in that.
I always loved the retail thing. I used to do this as a social hack for amusement. I think you may remember, fellow conspiracy realists, if you've ever filled out a resume for a retail position, sometimes there'll be these ridiculous questions on there like, if hired for this job, would you steal? Or if you saw someone stealing, would you report them to a manager? And there were days where I would just go to places like that and just check yes on questions like, I just wanted to see what they would do. I'm going to tell you what, 3 places did come back and wanted to hire me. Isn't that weird?
Really?
Yeah, that's the closest I ever got to lying on a resume.
I think that's what would be considered a socially acceptable resume fib, perhaps. Not even. I mean, it's really just, it's checking a box, and it's a little bit vague in the first place, right?
No, I told them I would straight up steal if they hired me. And 3 of them were like, I like the cut of your jib.
So they appreciated your candor.
I guess so. I think they just needed warm bodies. But lying on a resume, is way more common than people think, right?
It's not only common. There are shades of it, right? There's like what you did, which is kind of just like a ballsy move that maybe you wouldn't have done if you were taking. It seems to me like maybe you weren't really taking that application particularly seriously. I don't know. Maybe you thought that it. Okay, fair enough. Boom. Then you've got folks that, maybe you've only ever looked at Excel a couple of times, or maybe you know how to read an Excel document, but you don't really know all the bells and whistles of like formulas and all the things, yet you say you're proficient in Excel. Because you assume, like most often is the case, that you can kind of figure that stuff out on the job, which is always how it's kind of been for me. I think the most I've ever done is maybe they ask you for specific dates on job applications a lot of times, and sometimes who knows those exact dates. So you kind of just flub them as best you can. You could consider that lying if you're not being exactly accurate, but you're doing the best you can. My story today is about a dude who takes lying on your resume to the extreme, almost like elevates it to an art form. It's this guy named Christopher Massimines is how I'm going to pronounce it. It's Massimine. I think it sounds like maybe an Italian last name, Massimines, but maybe it's Massimines. But I like Massimines better, so that's what I'm going to say. I haven't heard it said in a news report. I've just seen some reports about it in the Salt Lake City Tribune, Fox 13 of Salt Lake City, and a few other outlets that have reported on this guy. from a little less than a week ago. He is currently, one would assume there hasn't been any news to otherwise, the head of a theater company that is part of the University of Utah College of Fine Arts. It's a theater company called the Pioneer Theater. And they stage plays for students to go through the drama program at the University of Utah. And last year, they issued a press release, or actually rather in late 2019, congratulating this guy, Massimini, for achieving the Humanitarian of the Year award from a group called the National Performing Arts Association, or depending on which outlet you read, the National Performing Arts Action Association. There were different versions of the release that left out the word action. But it turns out that organization doesn't actually exist. And this kind of triggered a little bit of investigation later into this guy's, kind of bona fides. And it came up with some pretty fantastic stuff in his resume. He apparently either fully fabricated or just like fudged to the nth degree almost everything in his resume, including went so far. Again, the jury is still out. He hasn't had responded to this, but there are Internet Movie Database entries for him saying that he was a producer on video games. I think one of them was Resident Evil Village, and there were several others that he had a credit on. A documentary called Free Solo he was credited on, that was about free climbing, I believe. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse listed him as a script consultant, and then also Suicide Squad had him listed as a special thanks. Fox 13 of Salt Lake City looked into all this stuff and followed up, and none of those films knew anything about him. None of the production companies behind them knew anything about him, nor did the creators Capcom of Resident Evil Village or Square Enix's Final Fantasy VII remake. They told Fox 13 that they had never heard of him, that he had not been the producer on any of those games. So that part is interesting, because it goes to show how easily fabricated Internet Movie Database can be, and how it probably shouldn't be a primary source for folks that are cross-referencing credits and things like that. Alex Williams, a buddy of ours who does the amazing podcast Ephemeral, said that very thing to me recently, that it's not the best source of research, and this kind of proves it to me. He also was listed as being the executive producer or some high-level producer for 2 Tony Award-winning musicals, including the Green Day musical adaptation of American Idiot. And it turns out that at the very most, he was a junior producer on those. He even has credits listed in his resume, like total genre hopping. It's okay, I'm also the master of theater. I'm also a Don Draper level ad executive, and supposedly was involved in Old Spice campaigns and all of these different, television ad campaigns. And it just kind of is this never ending rabbit hole of fabrication. And the thing is, the position that he has with the University of Salt Lake City, or the University of Utah, rather, in Salt Lake City, is a government paid position. And it's publicly posted how much money he makes. And it's in the neighborhood of $137,000 a year, with an additional $50,000 worth of benefits and bonuses and things like that. So he is definitely considered an executive. He's only 35 years old as well. So that's a pretty serious salary, $200K living in Utah, bill footed by taxpayers. So I don't know. I thought that this was an interesting story because so many people lie on their resume, and so many employers don't really vet any of these bona fides. And if you see all of this stuff and you kind of just are blown away by oh my God, this guy is too good to be true, probably is too good to be true. But I don't know. Have you guys ever heard of any resume fudging to this degree? That's the only reason I brought it up, because I thought it was just kind of the most egregious version of this that I could possibly imagine.
Oh, sure. Rachel Dolezal is a great example of being a fraud in the academic world. right? And I think that's incredibly egregious because she literally lied about her identity and who she was.
Sure.
You know, I think that's like, maybe that's a little heavier than what we're looking for, but there is, it's astonishing, the kind of resume faking that can happen. There's one guy I read about, a guy named Michael Matthews, who's a founder of a firm called Moxie. And he thinks that at least 20% of professional like recruiters are faking client resumes to make their own businesses look good. So I believe this happens in a lot of different places, in a lot of different ways. And in the world of academia, I wouldn't be surprised. We know that people have even published fraudulent papers in so-called peer-reviewed journals. Just this, like, make something up, see if they can get it through the pipeline. And then maybe there's something aspirational about it. You know what I mean? Maybe when people are saying, like, I am fluent in insert language here, they're thinking to themselves, I will learn this language by the time it comes up at my job. You know what I mean? So I think there are levels to it, but I'm glad to say I don't think any of us have really fudged resumes.
Well, I don't know that I've ever gotten a job, like specifically, you know, with a cold submission of a resume. It's always kind of been someone that I either had worked with in the past or, you know, been friends with or crossed paths with in some, you know, other way socially, perhaps. And I think that kind of networking is really important. But I think there's another detail about this guy that I thought was interesting. He claims to have gotten both a bachelor's and a master's degree from NYU in only 3 years. And Fox 13 was able to debunk this in about 5 minutes, that he only has the bachelor's degree and did not, in fact, receive a master's degree at all, which is probably a prerequisite for the kind of position that we're talking here, you know, being an executive and the head of like an educational institution.
So look, you guys, you know the great bard and the saying.
Indeed.
The entire world, you guys, that's the stage. This person is going to be a director of theater. You don't think that becoming a character before you go on stage is going to be a part of him?
Very good point.
His regimen?
Matt, as a guy who pretends to be different people in different cities and at different airports, hang on, let me get I've been playing with my eye patch this whole time. So, like, yeah, why not? Maybe he's just trying to spice things up. Maybe he's method. Yeah, there we go. All right.
I mean, if you could perform a character that makes $215,000 a year, wouldn't you do it? No, I'm not. This is egregious and terrible. There are qualified people that could be in that position, you know, and it stinks that this person got it just by being creatively deceptive.
It's astonishing that they haven't been fired. I mean, that's another problem with nepotism over meritocracy. You know what I mean?
I'm sorry, who am I speaking to? Who is this?
Oh, no, Matt. See, it's me.
Oh, God, it's you,
It's me the whole time.
Okay.
What's that old John Lovitz joke? Acting. But you're right. It is strange, Noel. The thing that stands out the most to me about this is that the guy appears to still have his job. Like, how bizarre is that? Maybe there's like a firing process they have to go through. That happens in some organizations.
Yeah, I think it sounds like this is a real embarrassment for the organization, especially since so much of this stuff is like within their community and within their field. Like the idea that he was nominated for like Tony Awards, for example. That's very much something that folks in the theater community would be able to kind of vet and check out. That he was associated in some way with those productions that I mentioned, but wasn't like the degree of producer that would cause him to be listed on the Tony nomination. He was some kind of lower level producer or assistant of some kind, but definitely not, you know, what he claimed to be. One thing he is, and one of the things in his resume that did prove, oh, by the way, there were like over 100 different employers listed in his resume. So all of this stuff from like over the course, again, he's 35. So I just don't know how they wouldn't see that and like like maybe it was just overload where they're like, well, God, look at all this stuff. Where do you even start? Maybe start with the college degree that the news or organization was able to figure out that he didn't get, in 5 minutes. That would probably be a good place to start. And if one thing turns up, fake, chances are where there's smoke, there's fire. But he is, in fact, an expert in Yiddish culture and the Yiddish language. He once held a position at the National Yiddish Theater, Volksbeine in New York City, and was a big hand in producing an all Yiddish language version of Fiddler on the Roof that got some mild acclaim. And he also, did write a musical that was produced off Broadway. But I'm interested to see where this goes because, the news organizations that are reporting on this have reached out to him directly, have reached out to his department, and they've been kind of given the runaround. So I think it is a pretty embarrassing thing because it shows that somebody didn't do their homework.
So I'm also wondering, maybe he just embellished stuff. That happens all the time in entertainment. Maybe he's a featured extra and he's like, hey, they did ask me about the lighting. That's a producer credit for me. Or maybe he knows a guy named Tony and he got his pal Tony to print him a certificate of some sort, maybe it's not all bad.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there are a couple of things in it that definitely were true, and he certainly embellished some things in terms of the scale of his role, but he absolutely made some things up, quite a few things up entirely. And I think the reason the story is interesting is because of both sides of it. Like I said, I think how common it is for people to lie on their resume and how common it is for employers to oftentimes not truly vet, the applications they're receiving. And I actually found there's, what's the legal ramifications for this, for example? So if you lie on your resume and then are terminated for it, you have no claim. You really can't, argue that you've been wrongfully terminated. You lose any legal claim in the event that you're terminated, and you also lose any legal claim to unemployment benefits, right? You can even, let's say you lied about something and then, did something that was considered criminally negligent or something that you were not qualified to do. I think you'd think that would be on the employer, but let's see. There are certain cases where you could be held liable for criminal responsibility. Like, for example, if you lie about military service to get a benefit, right? Then you can be prosecuted under something called the Stolen Valor Act, which is interesting. Or if you are trying to get employment from a state or federal employer, the crime of lying on the resume could be considered a crime of lying to a federal or state government agent, which would be the case in this situation, I would think.
Right. Yeah, that's an important distinction. I'm glad you made it. So technically, for a lot of resumes, because they are not legal documents, you'll have repercussions for lying about them. But depending on what you lie about, it's not technically a crime. However, if you are, let's say, going for the State Department or you're going into a federal level position where your resume is evaluated by a federal agent, then it counts as lying to a federal agent, which can hit you pretty hard. It's real kick in the pants. That's not just the possibility of a fine. That's the possibility of hard time.
That's why you always get a job as an intern when your qualifications don't matter at all.
No, Matt, we're old. We were back in the day.
I know.
Have you seen job applications now? It's like entry level. Please have 5 years of experience.
Yeah, okay, sure. Well, just generate that. Ooh, with this resume.
This is an unpaid position. Must live in Manhattan.
It is insane. I mean, it really is insane. And yeah, we cannot forget how lucky we are, and in a place of privilege for having a job right now that we got back then. But I just want to say, you guys, I just watched a horror movie with this as the premise that you can go out and watch right now if you have a streaming service. I can't remember which one I watched it on, but the movie, I think it's on Netflix, which could be good because a lot of us have that. It's called Things Heard and Seen. That's what it's called. And I'm not going to spoil it for you, but at the crux of what's happening here, there is a fudged resume.
You're going to really make me watch the whole film?
You don't need to watch the whole
thing. Can you
thing.
just text me afterwards and tell me what happens?
No,
we record?
No. You can fast forward. It's Netflix. You could just be like, oh, here's the end, and you spoil it for yourself. But it's pretty good. I like the cast a lot, and it's got a pretty good team behind it. It is not highly rated, just for everyone out there, but I think there's a lot of cool stuff going on in the film, and it does have a fudged resume in it.
39% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, don't let critics tell you what to think. Check out a film, and if you enjoy it, then you enjoy it.
I think her name's Amanda. I cannot remember her full name, but the lead in it is really, really good. And the dude is great too. James Norton is his name.
And Amanda Seyfried? Seyfried?
Yeah, I think that might be it. Just really, really good performances when it comes to acting,
Acting! Eye patch. I got to get the eye patch.
All right. But yeah, I'm sorry, you guys. I know I didn't mean to take us off base anymore, but
no, that's exactly where we needed to go. This is sort of a silly story, but also, I don't know, not really a conspiracy, but I guess deceiving people on a large scale like this is a form of conspiracy. It's a conspiracy of one, and I'm interested to see what happens if the university kind of cops to it and says, "Okay, you got us," but I just can't imagine this is going to go very well for this gentleman in terms of future employment. But it is something to think about. Maybe be a little careful when you're fudging things on your resume, because there could come a time where you get called on it and put on blast on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully he'll strongly consider breaking the habit of being dishonest.
Yeah, I would hope so too, Doc.
Well,
I would hope so too.
You never know with those types.
Nobody got the Linkin Park reference. Nobody likes that song.
Is that a Linkin Park reference?
I was gonna let that one slide and just see if anybody noticed.
And we've come full circle.
In the end, none of this really even matters. So.
Also, it only becomes a conspiracy when multiple people are working together on it. So it's quite possible, given this guy's storied career, that someone knew and just didn't spill the beans. So yeah, I would say that this does feel like a conspiracy. Someone had to know at some point. It took Fox 5 minutes to make that call. You know what I mean? Hang on. This eye patch is getting to me today.
Just keep that in mind. I designed this rhyme to explain something that I can't remember.
And what better way to...
Is that a Linkin Park reference? Sorry.
Everything is a Linkin Park reference when you think about it. And what a better way to end strange news for today, folks. Clearly, most important thing you can do now is let us know your favorite Mike Shinoda verse. And let us know your favorite deep cut Linkin Park song. Let us know your stories about people lying on resumes. Let us know your concerns about makeup and PFAs, and let us know what you think about space exploration. Let us know if you think something's up with it. There are a lot of people who've written in the past who've told us that maybe human beings should fix the planet they already have before darting off to a new one. We'd love to hear your takes. Remember, when you write to us, you may end up on a listener mail segment. So we try to make it easy to find us online.
That's right. You can find us on the usual internet locations of note. We've got the Facebook, where we're Conspiracy Stuff. We're also Conspiracy Stuff on Twitter. We're Conspiracy Stuff Show on Instagram.
Yes. YouTube, Conspiracy Stuff. You can find us there. It's tough to search for a lot of our videos. For some reason, they just don't show up. So the best way to find any content that we've ever made in video form is to go to youtube.com/conspiracy stuff and then search within that site, and you'll be able to find stuff. If you don't want to do that, we do have a phone number. You can reach us at 1-833-STDWYTK.
3 minutes. Those 3 minutes are yours. Give yourself a sick nickname. Let us know what's on your mind. Most importantly, let us know whether we can use your voice and or name and message on air. If there is something at the very end that you would just like to share with the team, with Matt and Doc and Noel and Mission Control and myself, then that's fine. Just leave it at the very end of the message. And most importantly, if you have a story that needs more than 3 minutes, don't feel like you have to censor yourself. That is antithetical to this show. Instead, write out the whole thing and send it to us. We read every single email we get. All you have to do, regardless of where you are and what time it is drop us a line where we are.
Conspiracy at iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.